on death row in Texas, fighting for a 30-day stay of execution to try to prove his innocence. His name? Claude Jones. His lawyers wanted DNA testing on a hair from the crime scene, since the original identification was based on then limited science. But no one ever tested that hair, and the state of Texas put Jones to death. That was nearly 10 years ago. But this week, lawyers for the Innocence Project, a group that works to free wrongfully convicted prisoners, finally got those DNA results. And they say it appears Texas may have executed an innocent man. Listen.
The hair at the crime scene did not come from Claude Jones, and no doubt about guilt. If that DNA test had been performed, we know there would have been plenty of doubt about guilt, and this conviction would have been reversed, and this execution wouldn't have taken place. That's the truth.
Let's take this to our legal panel now. Criminal defense attorney Keith Sullivan and Randy Zellin, a former prosecutor who now works as a criminal defense attorney. And Keith, I guess the key question is, without that evidence, was there enough evidence to convict?
Unequivocally, there was not. Every single one of the briefs, every single one of the judge who handled this appeal talked about the forensic evidence. And now we find out that that wasn't evidence at all. And tragically, the prosecutor in this case spent several years trying to destroy that evidence to ensure that you and I would not be having this discussion today, and Barry Shack would not have proven that an innocent man was put to death in Texas. It is tragic.
You know, we talked about innocent men being put to death. Let me just go to Randy real quickly here. We just have to specify for the record, Randy, and you can back me up on this. The United States, there is no proof, not a single shred of evidence that the United States has ever put anyone wrongfully to death. True?
Hey, you would certainly like to think so, but the reality is there's a very compelling argument made in this case. However, I've always wanted to say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I finally get to say it, because the reality is, because of the strides in technology, DNA technology, the likelihood today of putting an innocent man to death are about as good as my hair growing back on this show right now. So the truth is, don't go back 10 years and indict us today. We learn, we do better, and hopefully what happened 10 years ago cannot ever happen again, because the death penalty serves a real function and a real utility in our criminal justice system.
But you're saying excuses for the sins of the past, Randy, and Keith, you know, there's no evidence that sins of the past have been made. Barry Scheck is making a reasonable argument in this case, but again, there's no proof that this man was wrongfully put to death.
Absolutely there is, Trace. The evidence indicates that's the only forensic evidence that ties him to the murder. And there is no evidence. That's it. He never would have been convicted. If the jury had heard that, or if the appeals court had heard that, he would have been released from prison. The Innocence Project has been up and running for 18 years. 14 people a year. 14 people a year are released from death row, and their innocence is proven. Those numbers are staggering. A few moments ago, you talked about banning Happy Meals in California. If those numbers show how many innocent people and how many times we get it wrong, there should be a moratorium on the death penalty. And whatever benefit you think you derive from the death penalty, that same benefit can be obtained by incarceration for an eternity.
Advocates say that the benefit, Randy, is it's a deterrent and that it honors the dead.
Oh, it does that, and guys like Richard Mulhausen, who've testified before Senate subcommittees, have established that certainly someone thinking about committing that kind of crime, the ultimate crime, may very well think twice about doing that if they may find themselves similarly situated. And of course, there is the notion of an eye for an eye. The ultimate crime should meet the ultimate penalty. It preserves law and order. It does so much for society. And because of where we are today, we can do so much to make sure that there's never a question about an innocent person being convicted. And you know what, Trace, you make a great point. None of us can say that the verdict would have been any different 10 years ago, right, without that, with or without the hair. There's no proof that the man was innocent. And by the way, he had murdered before.
You look at this case, Keith, in Connecticut, at Stephen Hayes, and you talk, I know you're anti-death penalty here, but you look at this case in Connecticut.
I used to not be.
And if that was your family, and Stephen Hayes killed them one by one, how would you feel about the death penalty then? How should that family feel? That's what advocates are saying is the poster person for the death penalty.
Trace, I would have comfort and joy in knowing that those individuals are spending the rest of their life rotting in jail. That would give me comfort and joy if somebody would take the life of me. To put them to death is not only more expensive for the taxpayers, it's painless, physically painless to the individual. And studies, you know, Randy makes a good point, but studies have shown that have been performed on actual people who are on death row that the death penalty is not a deterrent at all for them, and that's what you have to go on. So that argument it defies logic and it defies the empirical data.
It's been debated for many, many years. Keith Sullivan, Randy Zellen, gentlemen, good of you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.